the reason. It's usually referred to as ethnic or territorial, but it is clearly a religious. And at this point, Turkey has jumped in with mercenaries, actually jihadis. And this is making it all the more volatile.
Yes, Erdogan seems to be siding, of course, by no surprise to anyone, with Azerbaijan. Why is that, and what is he up to?
Well, he has an agenda of his own, and he seems to be invading several places at the same time with mercenaries and his own troops. And, he's been sending a lot of the same kind of mercenaries into Libya. And now we have him doing the same thing here. His agenda is a Neo-Ottoman empire, as far as anyone can tell, with him as the caliph.
We see now in the Middle East, the small little country of Armenia is now locked in a conflict in a region called, I believe, Nagorno-Karabakh. In this region, we see now that the Armenians are locked in a brutal conflict with the country of Azerbaijan. All right, but the important thing about this is, again, Azerbaijan is a well-known proxy of Erdogan of Turkey. And what's really happening here in Armenia is we're really seeing the creation by Erdogan of a neo-Islamist Ottoman empire. And he's beginning to spread that empire across the Middle East, using countries like Azerbaijan as proxies to sort of build this sort of Sunni Islamist, again, Neo-Ottoman empire. And we see the small country of Armenia, which is, of course, a Christian nation. The Armenian Orthodox Church, or the Armenian Christian Church, one of the oldest Christian and apostolic churches of, the Christian Church. It's very closely affiliated with the Russian Orthodox Church. It's one of the oldest Christian churches, and it's under attack in this region in Armenia, and they're at war with the Turks. And we see again what Erdogan is doing is he's trying to rebuild his empire. And really what this is a replay of is the old classic conflicts between Christians and Islamist civilization. And it's really starting to come back. And what we're not hearing from the establishment is the establishment in the United States and in Europe is really not that interested in this conflict. I mean, are we hearing all these cries for intervention, all these cries about the atrocities being committed against Armenians in the same way that we heard about Syria, in the same way we heard about Libya? No, we're not, because the reality is the establishment does not have an interest in defending Mideast Christians in countries like Armenia or in this region. That doesn't really pay the bills. It doesn't fuel the military-industrial complex for us to be involved in that. And we look at the country like Turkey, who is very much becoming an authoritarian government with essentially an emperor, that the establishment in the West is not looking at him as this great tyrant in the same way that we look at, Vladimir Putin of Russia, or the president of Iran. We're not looking at him in the same way. We're seeing him as, again, he's a NATO ally. We got to stand up for our NATO ally. And it may not be that far out of bounds that the United States or Europe might end up siding with Turkey and Azerbaijan on this issue. And we're seeing that Armenia, little Armenia, the country that suffered a genocide at the hands of the Turks in the early 20th century, is essentially being abandoned by the international community to this Turkish aggression. And at the same time, conversely, what do we see? The ultimate enemy of the establishment, Russia, is again stepping in to fulfill a new role of being essentially the protector of Christians in the Middle East. They did this in Syria, and now they're doing it essentially in Armenia as well, in a smaller way. We're seeing now Russian peacekeepers being deployed. And it's really not that far outside of bounds that we'll start to see a demonization of this. This will be looked at as another Russian invasion. People look at this and say the Russians are invading Armenia. They're invading Azerbaijan, when really they're defending a country. They're defending essentially a Christian country that's being abandoned. And that is really what the biggest problem here is, that we don't really live in a Christian civilization where we are. We live in mostly a sort of a corporatist civilization. This sort of elite, this establishment is really what calls the shots, not sort of our Christian values, not our conservative cultural values in the way it would have been in centuries past. And that's really a shame, and that's really what it is that we have to challenge. And so really we have to stand with Armenia, and we have to stand up to Erdogan and prevent him from creating this new Islamist Turkish Ottoman Empire. And we have to see that as a major threat to sort of Christian civilization.